I'd like to talk about Charlie Kirk. First of all, I want to say there has never been one point, at any point, where I actually thought shooting him was in anything but despicable act of cowardly violence. But I really want to stress that I'm very much against making him a hero. I'm very much against Trump making a statue and giving him a burial as if he was a senator, a minister, or anything but a man who went around colleges trying to get people to convert to evangelist Christianity. This is what I see him as doing. Everything he talked about was pointing towards Christianity is the only path. And he's entitled to think so, but he could have been a preacher. He could have been a Sunday school teacher. He could have taught religion. He didn't have to go and make it an argument, a social, political argument, because everything, if you notice, every argument and discussion that he ever had points to Christianity is the only way, Jesus is the only way. And that is against the separation of church and state, which in Israel we are dealing with constantly, because majority of Israelis are secular, and we have a minority that's taking over. And the same thing in the US. I don't know if it's a minority, but I do know that it's not a majority, and the voices of people who are not religious have absolutely been silenced. And that's not okay. You cannot have liberty if you do not have a Christian population. What's the connection? Why do we need Christianity to have liberty? So he promoted the great replacement theory. He described Martin Luther King Jr., a big hero to a lot of people, as an awful person. And it's very Trump-like, the way Trump said about the senator who was in prison, and he said, I don't respect heroes that were kept hostage or were injured. And it's the same way. He showed a deep lack of respect from some of the iconic figures in American history. Amongst them, Martin Luther King Jr. Yes, I've heard a lot of stories about how he's not a hero, but no, you have no right to put him down. You have no right, it's not very Christian to take a minister who was assassinated and denigrate him and speak to him in a disrespectful way and to promote hate towards him. He's not alive to argue. And it seems like he met the same fate because of karma. Martin Luther King Jr. was a great leader in the civil rights movement and someone I can always look up to. He was also a Zionist. He was a great friend of the Jewish people and of Israel. And he presented himself, Charlie, as a friend of Israel. But if he was indeed a friend of Israel, why would he say that the only path is Christianity? And if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, if you don't accept him as your Lord and Savior, you have no rights for anything. You're basically a lost person, and that Christianity is the only way. And there's no question that Charlie had strong opinions that rubbed people the wrong way. Should he have been assassinated? Again, absolutely no. But was he a hero? And definition of a hero for me is someone who does a great deed and leads people towards a new path. Like he called his turning point, his company. Turning towards what? Towards everyone becoming like Middle Ages crusaders? I don't think so. So this is his, sorry. Oh gosh, I have commercials, sorry.
425 feet away.
So
Video surveillance captured the shooter running across the rooftop of this building, jumping to the ground and running away. Investigators learned that the gunman arrived at the building with a rifle.
So this is the rifle he was shot with.
Content of the inscription.
And this is the man.
Speak to a friend who worked for the U.S.
A few words about him. Apparently, he grew up in a Mormon Republican home, and he was taught by his father to shoot. Then he was just even one semester, not even one semester at a university, not where Charlie Kirk spoke, another University of Utah, and then he dropped out and he decided to study in a more practical path. And he developed very extreme leftist ideologies, especially towards LGBT, because he was in the LGBT community. His partner was a man who was transitioning. So he had very strong ideas about that, and he saw Charlie, of course, as the enemy. And he was narcissistic, just like Donald Trump is narcissistic, and I would venture to say Charlie Kirk was definitely a narcissistic personality. What is a narcissistic personality? A person who thinks that everything in the world revolves around them. So with the case of Charlie Kirk, he thought everything revolves around, he wants to be a Christian, he wants to see Jesus as his Lord and Savior. Fine. Why does everybody in the world have to follow that path? This man thinks that Charlie Kirk is a horrible human being, a fascist, and he deserves to die. Nobody deserves to die, and he has no right to kill people. But since he obviously trained on poor, helpless animals, because that's how he became such an amazing shooter, then psychopaths often, I would say he's a narcissistic and a psychopath, psychopaths train on poor, helpless animals first, and then they move on to people. I don't think it's that important that he was LGBT. He was a violent person, period. This is his lovely family. His father was a police officer. Would I, in his place, and nobody wants to be in his place, would have handed over my son to the police? I would say, knowing that he could face a death penalty, a shooting squad, by the way, my answer is absolutely I would not do it, but he is to be praised. He works in the sheriff office, and he should not have brought up his son to be a violent person shooting animals and shooting. And gun control is definitely a problem in America. And it's very sad that Charlie Kirk never spoke up against the problem with guns and how easily it is to get a gun in America. And he never said anything about the school shootings. But what interested him is to demonize LGBT people. This is the company that the shooter kept. Where is it? Just a second. We're moving on to the shooter. So I don't think it's a black and white situation. I don't think these are the furries. These are very weird. I mean, I'm not saying it in a nice way. This is not pretty. This has a lot of problematic. I don't want to get into it, but it's definitely not a group I would like to talk about. It's just, yes, this is the psychiatrist analyzing. I must say his pace is quite slow and his voice is monotonous and boring. So, was this a hero in any way? What did he do to deserve a monument? What did he do to deserve the flag of the USA being placed at half mode? What did he do? What did he do to deserve it? What did he do for America? He got Donald Trump elected. Even Donald Trump says, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been elected, which makes us think even less of him, because a lot of people are not happy Donald Trump is in office. The way he talks about women, LGBT, minorities, quite problematic. And his inacceptance of ideas that are different than his. It's very narcissistic. He actually has a niece who's a psychiatrist, or psychologist, who wrote a book about him. And definitely Donald Trump has been assessed by others as a narcissist. Now, again,
Tyler, add clarity on
Again, this man,
rest.
I'm going to show him
Cannot
again.
function left.
Wow. People who
Civil war.
speak a lot are also
Fair,
narcissistic.
Except targets are going to destroy the world. That system claimed to be anti-fascist. Yet it is the far left who wants to destroy democracy. A society where people can be killed based on how they use their freedom of speech cannot function or thrive. Under that system, who gets to decide the criteria for execution? Only the extreme left? Or does everyone have a vote? Those who celebrate Charlie's death are really advocating for a civil war, a descent into a free-for-all to see who can kill more people, where ideology is enforced with bullets instead of conversations. This type of political violence reveals the narcissism of the far left, which, to be fair, exists on the far right as well.
Exactly.
At the extremes of the political spectrum, people do not want to debate. Rather, their desire is to win at any cost. They justify murder by claiming their targets are going to destroy the world, when in reality, it is the extremists who pose the greatest threat. Through Charlie's death, he was able to point directly at those who pose the greatest risk to freedom. Those are my thoughts on the case of Charlie Kirk. Thank you so much.
So, I want to end with showing that I don't understand why, just because they were friends, he deserves a fancy schmancy funeral and his body's presented and the flags are at half-mast and he's a hero. He got him elected. So it's clearly political and not something that is in the interest of the people of the United States, but it's in the interest of this person. And this makes him like a king figure, King Donald Trump, whereas this is supposed to be a democracy. And if this is your friend, this is how non-democratic societies work. You promote your friends and your family, nepotism. And he actually, I don't think he would have been voted as the next president. And I think the reason he met, the end that he met, was because he spoke against another person who was assassinated, Martin Luther King Jr. So I would say this is karma at work. And yes, he had a wife and 2 children, but what does that have anything to do with the fact that he didn't waste 1 minute that in denouncing people, demonizing people, and completely erasing the line between separation of church and state. And again, I repeat what he said, you cannot have liberty if you don't have a Christian population. This is the worst narrow-minded ideology ever. I believe, this is my opinion, that religions are like rivers leading to one sea. And everybody has their path of connecting to the universal creator, the creator of the universe, the universal force of creation, however you want to see it. And for one person to feel that he has a monopoly on knowledge, that he knows everything, he doesn't have to go to university. No, he doesn't have to have, at the university, you hand in papers and you have professors who tell you whether what you're saying makes sense or not. He decided that he doesn't need anybody. He is his own person. And yes, there are people that don't need people to tell them. They don't need a traditional schooling system. But most of us need leadership. And the fact that he thought he's above everyone is an act of hubris. He reminds me of the mythology, the Greek mythology figure of the man who wanted to fly to the sun, and the sun melted the wax on the wings. He created wings from feathers, and he flew near the sun, and then the sun melted his feathers, and he fell down to the earth and crashed. This is the story of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk thought he was above everyone. He thought that his path was the only way, my way, the only way, which is exactly what Trump says. And it's definitely not a democracy. Whether it's fascist or not, I would say probably yes. Whether he deserved to die, absolutely not. But this man should not have been allowed to enter universities. If I want to go to university and argue, nobody will let me in. There's a security guide, at least in Israel. Not everybody can come in. You can't just set a booth and promote Christianity. For me, it's just as bad as the people who are promoting Palestinian ideology, which is also very narcissistic and very made up and not based on facts. And for that, he did Israel a great service, that he pointed out to how Palestinians are made up society from 1960s. Yasser Arafat, their leader, was not even Palestinian. He was born in Egypt. They have 57 countries, and that they want a part of the small, tiny Jewish homeland that has been around for thousands of years. So he did promote the Israeli agenda up to a point. But what really scares me is the fact that he said that only Christians have a right, that Christianity is the only way. So you're on the one hand, you're a friend of Israel, but you think the Jews are not allowed to be Jewish, Muslims are not allowed to be Muslim, Buddhists are not allowed to be Buddhist, and LGBT people are not allowed to be who they are, who they feel themselves to be. And again, I'm stressing, as long as they don't hurt other people, as long as not minors, children, animals, helpless people are not involved, what's the harm? He could have spoken about certain people taking advantage of vulnerable people on the spectrum and people with mental disorders, but he didn't talk about that. He used the Bible as his guide, and that's what evangelists, Christians do. But do they have a place at the university? I don't think so. Absolutely not. Is he a hero of the American people? What did he do for America? Who did he liberate? Who did he liberate? And just because he has a beautiful wife, who, by the way, I also have this criticism, how come all the Trump wives are beauty queens or fashion models or look like fashion models? It's kind of very disrespectful for women when you choose a woman for maybe not only because she's definitely educated and has talents. You choose a woman based on her looks. I don't think, it says in the Bible that beauty is vanity, and the only thing that matters is that a woman would be a God-fearing person. Of course, that's not my criterion for anyone, but the way he chose a beauty queen and beauty contests that actually they make women into posters. A woman is unworthy if she doesn't have a bikini figure and doesn't have certain features. She has to be a Barbie doll in a nutshell. And that's very, very disrespectful for women. Was his mother a Barbie doll and a beauty model? I don't think so. And yet him and the Trumps, they all marry models and beauty queens. Some of them have an education. They have trophy wives. It's very, very unchristian, unbiblical-like. In the Bible, the women are not chosen for their looks, but they're chosen for having a moral code. His wife might be all of those things. She might be beautiful and has a moral code. But what really stands out, the shallowness of choosing a woman based on her looks, that really stands out, especially when he wasn't very handsome himself. He was a funny-looking man, and he should not have gone to university campuses. That's not his job. Should have taught Sunday school or has to work as a preacher. But the way he was able to penetrate the Republican political party is absolutely despicable. And also in Israel, we have parallel problems. Our ultra-Orthodox parties infiltrated the government and are dictating the policy. They're telling us, we don't have to go to the army, but you do. We don't have to die, but we're going to dictate a very violent pro-war agenda and very anti-negotiation, anti-coexistence because they're extremists. And as Dr. Grande said, extremism is the problem. And he's not a hero. I'm sorry he was killed. I saw how he was killed, and I'm very sorry that somehow it entered my social media. And social media is indeed a great toxin and poison. And it's very highly addictive, like heroin. I think his main role, after watching quite a few videos of him arguing with students, was to convert people to evangelist, extremist, Christian stream of thought. That's it. He didn't want to talk about facts. He wanted people to convert. And Ben Shapiro is very naive if he thinks they were on the same page. Ben Shapiro loves Israel because he's a Jewish person. He loved Israel because he thought that Israel could help promote a religious agenda, and he thought that Israel, too, doesn't have a separation of church and state. I hope very much for Israel that we will have a separation of church and state, as we do in many, many fields of life, including education. And I hope we'll continue to have a separation of religion and state, so that whether you want to be secular or religious or spiritual or another religion than the majority, you have a right to do so. And whether you want to be LGBT, you have a right to do so as long as you don't harm other people. And children should be taught to be accepting of people that are different than them and not to be the same. And not everybody has to marry and have children. Definitely not everybody has to marry as a virgin. Not everybody has to marry and have children. Maybe it was good for him, but it's not good for everybody. And so the statistics say that 60% of divorce rate means that for a lot of people, marriage doesn't work out. And rather than to kill each other and to raise miserable children, it is better sometimes not to be in a marriage and not to raise children in a traditional family, but in a family where there's love between the parents, whether they're same-sex gender, transgender, or heterosexual. The main point is that the children grow up in a non-violent, healthy atmosphere where the parents communicate well. And it doesn't matter whether it's a man or woman, or a man and a man, and a woman or woman, a woman or man alone, or transgenders. It's important that those adults teach the children responsibility, love, and kindness towards people that are not the same as you. So let's hope that we learned the lessons, and I really hope that the U.S. stops two types of celebrations. Stop celebrating his murder, stop celebrating violence, and stop celebrating him as a hero. He had no place in the universities. He had no place in the any political party. His place was in the church, where people who choose to go to here, choose to be evangelist Christians, go and hear him give sermons on Sundays. Had he chosen that path, I believe he still would have been alive. But since Christianity admires a man who was crucified and died for others, so they say, I do not understand why there is such an outrage. A religion that celebrates death shouldn't be outraged that he has become a martyr in their eyes. But for me, from my point of view, it's very sad the way he was killed. It was a horrible execution, and I think his killer should definitely not see the light of day, even though he's only 22 years old. He definitely knew what he was doing, And I don't think our society is safe as long as criminals are allowed to be free. And we should feel sorry for their victims and their family of the victims. And I really want to say that I didn't mean to say bad things about him. I just meant to expose what I thought were a lot of lies. He was supposed to be a kind, loving person, yet he spoke words of hate about major American iconic figures, and also completely dismissed anyone who was not his carbon copy, which, yes, makes him to be an extremist. And no, not a very healthy figure, not a very good role model. Peace, light, and love, and I hope for him, wherever he is, that he has reached enlightenment, and for his wife and small children to have solace in the fact that they are now able to be free. And if one of his children finds that they are drawn to the same gender, they don't have to feel as if they're not allowed to express themselves and not allowed to love in a consensual adult relationship. Peace, light, and love again.
Yes,